I guess we'll open it up to questions now. Yep.
Jenna, did you know the roommates that you live with now when you were in Italy, or are they just from university but you hadn't met them yet?
I had met one of them briefly right before. When students from Bocconi are trying to study abroad, they have other abroad students that are in Italy represent the school. So I went to a fair and represented the University of Florida. So dozens of students would come around to the tables and ask questions about Florida and about the school. And so a few of them that I met, I gave out my phone number, and I wound up going to dinner with a lot of the students that wanted to come to Florida and just discussing the culture, how the life would be, what they should be prepared for. And I met them through this. And so they were looking for apartments, and we decided it would be a good fit.
What are you studying here at UF?
I'm studying finance.
Why did you decide to go to Italy as opposed to London, which is more, I would think that'd be more obvious fit if you're doing finance?
My main motivation for going abroad was not necessarily to go abroad, have fun, see a country, and leave. It was to learn a language, learn a culture. And I felt like going to England, I'm not going to get the language aspect of the culture. While different, I knew jumping into Italy would be a completely new experience, not knowing anyone, being with Italians, and my roommates are all from other countries. In England, I probably would have been surrounded by a bunch of English and Americans, and so I chose Italy based on this. It's almost like the challenge of learning the language and learning a new country, and I felt like it would be very worthwhile to do it in this way.
Ali, at one point you said when you were a junior you just made the decision that you wanted to integrate.
Mm-hmm.
And when you made that decision, did you come up with a strategy, like now I'm going to do this, this, and this consciously to further integrate, or just decided to let things happen and encourage?
No, there was definitely a decision. I decided to spend less time with people like me, the internationals. That was, one of the first strategies out there, and to try very, very hard, because when you want to make friends, you can't just expect it to happen. You need to be out there and do your part to have friends, and decided to be involved in things that will put me in the same room with many Americans and people who are different than me. So even it affected my involvement, affected my social activities, where I'll try to do less of the international, crowd and more of the local crowd.
So local crowd means clubs where most of the members are American students? Or?
Clubs where most of the students are American, doing activities. If I have one friend who's American, I'll ask him or her to introduce me to her or his friends, stuff like that.
I have a question for Jenna. You make it sound really easy to just make the decision to pick up and go for a year without speaking any Italian. Were there, did you ever doubt your decision, have you always been like that you were just willing to jump into new things, or how did that come about?
I've been willing to jump into new things, yes, but I definitely doubted it in the first weeks when I learned that the language issue would be such a problem, and I don't know, you just have to overcome it. The main point is leaving your comfort zone. Without that, I had many American friends who went, and they got what they wanted out of it, but unfortunately, when I talk to them now, they regret not staying in Milan and traveling the whole time, because they didn't live in Milan. They used it as a hub to travel. They didn't learn the language, and so I knew if I went over there, I'd have to do this for my own well-being. I would feel like I wasted my time there if you don't learn the language. People don't accept you, and even people that can't speak English, somewhat you notice that they don't want to adapt to you. They feel like you're in their culture. Adapt to them. Learn Italian. And I noticed kind of the standoffish feeling of maybe they think I'm ignorant for not knowing Italian or trying to learn it. So I thought you just have to put the effort in and learn. And if I would have stayed one semester, it would have been a bit harder. But staying a year, you have time to form yourself. As he said, you see the transition process. I saw 3 months in, I was kind of at my low, and I didn't feel a part of the culture. I didn't feel a part of Italy at all. And I was trying to immerse myself. And so I kind of felt like my efforts were going to waste. But then at a certain point, you start to feel progress and improvement, and that's when you realize I can do this, and it really motivates you. So making friends was hard, but even when you're kind of alone, you just have to realize that if you keep trying to improve yourself, you're going to make friends, you're going to meet people, and it comes together. I started meeting classmates once I spoke Italian, and
How did you find out about the basketball team? Because that seems to be like a really
Bizarre.
brilliant approach.
but they have a few club teams through the school, and I had researched. It was all in Italian, and I had called, and once again in broken Italian, left a message to see if I could try out. I didn't get a call back. I called again, and finally I received an email if you want to try. It was all in Italian. I actually didn't understand any of the email, so I took it to my language teacher, who told me what it said, when to meet, all of the information of what I would need to bring, and I tried out from there.
Ali, as an Arab in a post 9/11 America, what has been your experience in terms of, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation about Arab culture in the United States. What has been your experience?
This has been one of my surprises. Before arriving to the United States, whenever I'll talk to my classmates, those who have been to the United States, a lot of people will tell you, there's so much ignorance, people don't understand anything that's not American. We heard all of that. So in my mind, I had this kind of like, I already had the mindset that I should be very defensive. But surprisingly, at least here in Gainesville, I can't think of a single time where I felt rejected based on my background. And it's actually a topic where people will want to know more about you. But generally, I feel that people are very politically correct in this country. People are not willing to engage in a conversation that's controversial. So I feel that people generally are fairly careful. Like, I'll have to be the one who will speak about the issue if we're speaking about it in a general setting. But I didn't feel any disadvantage whatsoever as part of that process. Maybe you feel the slight disadvantage at the airport when arriving with a slight delay. But even with that, it's just a delay. Everyone's very respectful. So generally, I didn't feel that there was an issue. But as a group, sometimes you feel threatened. I mean, all of us know about Terry Jones, right? And there was a point where sometimes you think, what's going to happen? What's my position in this society? Do I belong here? It makes you think all these questions. And I know people who, especially those who are married and have families here, who had some serious concerns. Those who have their kids in school and thinking about their identity. So all bigger questions. As a student who's living here, by myself, I was, generally careless, didn't have to face any of these issues. While my brother, who works as a diplomat in Jordan, called me 2 days ago and he's telling me, hey, there's a lot of Islamophobia in the United States. I've been reading the news. What do you think? And I told him, honestly, this is not something that I experienced yet. Maybe in another position I would have.
Do you want to stay here after you graduate? I know you said you graduate in 52 days, or do you have any idea what you want to do after? Or?
Well, I wouldn't mind staying if the job market was better. But the job market is not that great. And for me personally, I would only stay if I find my dream job. Otherwise, I know I could go back home and do well by virtue of my degree.
What's your dream job?
I'm very interested in entrepreneurship and of course, everyone wants to work for Google, right? But again, if I get a job like that, where having to work in somewhere in Silicon Valley in the tech industry, I would stay. But I also wouldn't mind going back home and starting my own business, my own technology-related business.
I have another question for Jenna. Ali mentioned that when he went back, he was kind of seen as the American. Are you feeling any of that with your UF friends, that now you're living with Italians? Are you not really connecting with them anymore? And are they seeing you as now all European and Italian rather than the old Jenna?
I mean, as he said, you have to adapt to your circumstances. So when I'm here, I do get back on my role of the life I lived here before, but there are things that change, and certain me living with all Italians, for example, I'm not living with my friends that I normally would have. I still see them a lot, but I wanted to stay connected to the European lifestyle. And so, yeah, somewhat it does affect me and my friends.
You mentioned, Jenna, you'd like to work overseas after you graduate in some sort of business-related field.
Yes.
Could you talk a bit more about that, why you would want to do that rather than find a job here, how your family feels about that?
Well, once again, it's kind of the experience of being abroad and learning a new culture now in the business setting. I've also considered going to grad school in September, and the two schools I've narrowed it down to are in Switzerland and England. And they have the degree here in the U.S. as well, but it's almost like I want to continue what I haven't finished or start with a new culture. The reason I want to go to Switzerland is to speak French and maybe try this whole new process, try the same methods in Switzerland and not know anyone, start from scratch, meet people.
They've got a great basketball team.
Jenna, I think becoming part of a basketball team is a great strategy because you're involved with a group of Italians and it doesn't require just speaking when you didn't have the language skills. Are there other strategies that would have been equally effective or that you might have seen other people apply in order to integrate themselves in the way you were able to integrate yourself with the basketball team?
I mean, even in classes and class groups and such, you do projects together and you get to know each other on a school basis. But it's your decision if you want to take it a step further. So I feel like you can make friends in any situation should you want to, because we have many group projects and in classes, just branching out. People, same as he said, they'd hear my accent and ask me where I'm from, and we'd get to just talking about the different cultures and the things I've experienced while in Italy. So I think just putting yourself out there and being willing to talk to people, you'll meet people.
Can I respond to your question as well? I find from my personal experience that sometimes simple language can affect the way that that others accept you. For example, I find that people are generally allergic to criticism here. So when I sit down and say, hey, I think that there's something wrong with your government or your education system, people all of a sudden get very, very defensive. So by simply changing the language, I said, do you know what's wrong with our education system? Just saying our, all of a sudden people are willing to listen, So your and our just makes a big difference when when you try to tell them, hey, I'm one of you guys. People are far more relaxed about it. It's true.
Jenna, I would love to hear if you experienced kind of the opposite thing in Italy with direct conversation talking about, what is your government? Why is your government doing this or that kind of thing?
Somewhat. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot, you picture people speaking English there, but it's not so widely spoken. So I didn't necessarily get into specific topics of politics and such like this, but with my friends in Italy that did speak English, and I would say things about Berlusconi or the things I've read in the newspaper, and they would completely correct me on everything on their opinion of why the newspaper's wrong in the article, and explain to me that I need to research a bit more of the culture before I adapt the media's opinion. So